Yeah.
First of all, I'd say I'm doing very much for of the reveal in my biography.
Because of how he coped with depression?
Yeah.
Oh, I think we think more of him. I think, yeah, the question basically was in terms of Lincoln's, alleged bouts of depression and how he dealt with that, and should we think more of him, less of him, whatever. No, I think, first of all, and I'll tell you why. Well, the fact of the matter is that it destigmatizes the disease of depression. The fact that an Abraham Lincoln could struggle periodically with this, and to be very honest with you, and I don't pretend to be an authority, I think it's easy to exaggerate the extent to which Lincoln was, quote, depressed. There are incidents in his life when we know he was almost suicidal. There's no doubt that he was prone to what the 19th century would call the hypos, melancholy, we would call depression. The fact that with that monkey on his back, he was able to achieve what he achieved and to do for this country and the world what he did, it seems to me has got to be make the achievement even more remarkable than it is already. And the further fact that as I say, that it removes the stigma from a condition that for a long time was treated in this country as something shameful, something you didn't talk about, something you tried to keep under wraps. But again, my reference to Senator Eagleton, that incident, I think, in a curious sort of way, it's like when Mrs. Ford had her breast cancer operation, it brought this subject out of the closet and saved countless lives as a result. Who knows how many lives, the quality of life has been improved because belatedly we began to grapple with the reality of depression and other emotional illnesses. Yeah.
We talked a lot about health and war and that sort of thing, but what about presidential lies to the Congress? I mean, when that happens, then you have decision-making made on lies. And it seems to me that would be a really, really not only dangerous, but very unfortunate thing to have happen.
Give me an example.
Well, if you didn't tell the Congress of situations that you actually knew, even about war, it seems to me, and is there any evidence of any of the presidents that you think were the worst liars doing that sort of thing also?
Listen, Franklin Roosevelt is in the holy trinity of presidents, along with Lincoln and Washington. And he was a most skillful prevaricator. And I think history, by and large, has been grateful. There's no doubt that he, skidded around the truth often in dealing with Congress in the late 1930s, and because he had come to the conclusion, I believe, fairly early on, that like it or not, this country at some point would have to fight the fascist dictators. That is not, by any means, a conclusion that most in Congress had come to. And Roosevelt's genius, slippery as it may have been, was to move the country in a direction it didn't want to go, not always being completely truthful, or telling the truth but not the whole truth about where his policies were going to lead the country. In fact, inching toward a state of war with Germany without, and tried to put the onus on the Germans. By the way, I've been asked by more people, do you think he knew about Pearl Harbor? And the answer is no. I mean, that's my thought. I don't think he knew about Pearl Harbor. I think there was a consensus that it was very likely we were about to be attacked by the Japanese. But no one, you have to, hindsight makes things look inevitable. At the time, it's why conspiracy theories flourish, because it's hard to believe. There's a great line in Washington, most of the time, it's stupidity over conspiracy. Or incompetence. I mean, it would require such a leap of the imagination to believe that the Japanese from their home islands had the capacity or the audacity to attack Pearl Harbor. It was literally inconceivable. There were lots of more credible targets, including the Philippines, which of course turned out to be a target. So, anyway, but that notion that the great lie, that FDR, well, remember Clare Boothe Luce. Young people don't know Clare Boothe Luce, but the great playwright, polemicist, congresswoman from Connecticut, married to Henry Luce of Time magazine. It was a great line. She said FDR lied us into war. And there are still people to this day, who believe it. I don't. But anyway, yeah.
You're talking about president. How about some of the presidential advisors who were great players?
Give me an example.
Well, beyond example, Henry Kissinger.
Oh, but he's a diplomat. Remember the old line, an ambassador is someone who's sent abroad to lie for his country? Well, when you're Secretary of State, that's ambassador squared. No, I think that, I think Kissinger probably has never subjected to himself to a lie detector. But he would say the proof's in the pudding. Well, yeah.
Didn't Hitler declare war on us before Pearl Harbor?
No. Now, Hitler did something really stupid. Here's again, stupidity over conspiracy. Hitler never had to declare war on us. Hitler didn't have to be at war with us. If you were Hitler, the last thing you wanted to do was engage. We didn't declare war on Hitler. What happened was, on December 4th, 1941, the Chicago Tribune, that was the day that FDR had put the Chicago Sun on the streets because he hated Colonel McCormick and he wanted to run him out of town. So he got Marshall Field to put all this money into the Chicago Sun. And the colonel wanted to blow the sun out of, before it could rise, he wanted to blow it out of the water. So his reporters in Washington got a hold of the Army's war plans. To this day, no one knows exactly who supplied them. I personally, having researched it, believe FDR supplied them because he knew exactly what the colonel would do and what the consequences would be. But nevertheless, so on December 4th, 1941, the day the sun first appears in Chicago, the Chicago Tribune blares FDR's war plans. And basically the Army always has war plans, for all sorts of scenarios. And this one envisioned an invasion of Europe with 10 million men. And needless to say, 3 days later, that story was forgotten. But not in Berlin. Because several days after Pearl Harbor, Adolf Hitler convened the Reichstag and declared war on the United States. And as part of his justification, he cited the Chicago Tribune story. Yeah.
But that declaration was because of the Axis pact.
Sure, but he didn't have to do it. I mean, if you're Adolf Hitler, you don't have to do, it was a well, let's just say it was not in his interest, geopolitical or otherwise, to engage the United States in a full-scale conflict. And in theory only, he might have stayed out. And, it would have been a very different war.